Hallowed Things by Kaylie / I prefer the term antihero / me. 3,149 words. Florence walked along the sidewalk, leaves crunching beneath his feet. As he passed through the wrought iron gate, he tipped his hat to the spider weaving between the bars.
"Are you sure about this?"
A cat, trotting at his heels, asked. I thought black cats liked spooky places.
"Hey, I sleep in a warm bed covered in pink pillows with a little girl snuggling me. I am afraid of some ghosts."
Well, try not to yowl in horror when my friend shows up.
No promises.
Also, you're following a vampire. Aren't I scary?
In your dreams,
Kuro snorted. My dreams aren't so crass, Florence muttered. Since becoming a vampire, graveyards had started to feel cozier, like bedrooms. A fact that was unsettling in its comfort. It was as if his vampiric body could sense the coffins littering the area 6 feet below. He envied the skeletons sleeping soundly beneath his feet. No business unfinished, their memories simmering on the surface, the smell of flowers and new shoes to keep them company. At least, it felt peaceful as long as he avoided eye contact with his own grave. It was surprisingly quiet tonight. The ghost must have had other business to attend to, unfinished or otherwise. Various headstones and statues looked upon them or averted their eyes. Angels stood guard, virgins kept vigil, even a reaper leered down, holding its scythe close to its chest, looking like an old foe who held no sway.
"Hey, look at this one,"
Kuro pawed at an angel whose nose had fallen off.
"You should draw fangs on it. Freak some priest out."
Florence rolled his eyes. His nose has already fallen off. Let's not make him suffer greater indignity. As they kept walking, Kuro, noting a large headstone depicting the proud living visage of the dead man beneath it, scoffed.
"Man, this guy really thought he was something, didn't he? Not much now that..."
"Let's not make a habit of disrespecting the dead, kitty."
"You told Johnny last week that no one could love him if he was a worm, because he was already a worm, and no one loves him."
Yeah, well, Johnny's undead. Big difference. He walked up to a big headstone, more like a pedestal, with a bigger gargoyle atop it. Florence gestured to it. What do you think of that one?
The cat pondered it. "Needs some googly eyes."
Personally, I rather like Fred's eyes.
"Fred?"
What did he say about my eyes? The gargoyle, Frederick, said in his low rumble, sounding like he thought he ought to be offended.
"Ah, he's alive!"
Kuro hissed, back arched, fur standing on end. Kuro, meet Fred. Fred, Kuro. Pleased to meet ya. The gargoyle crouched down and offered his huge stony hand. The cat trepidatiously held out his paw, which Fred shook gingerly between 2 fingers. Can we just get this over with already? A feminine voice said, sounding like she was far away, even though she was close by. A youthful, semi-transparent woman leaned on a simple grave that said Fiona Riella, her hair floating unnaturally, her legs in an amorphous swoosh. I thought this was your tradition, Fee. It is, it's just... She sighed. This time's different. With a sound of stone grinding on stone, the gargoyle stepped off his pedestal, landing beside them, looking bashful, and opened his hand to reveal a package. You're sure people won't spot me? They might, but it's Halloween. If anyone says they saw a gargoyle flying by, people will think it was some prop or costume or hallucination. Florence handed Fred a bag. Fred placed his package gently into it and slung the tiny sack onto his huge shoulders. We're heading to his place first, right? He asked, pointing at Frederick. Florence nodded. Are we ready? Fee sighed and nodded. Fred tried to hide his stony grin. All right, Kuro. The vampire picked the cat up and put him in the gargoyle's hands. You're riding with Fred. Kuro's ears folded back.
"Why am I riding with Fred?"
Because he's the only one who can carry you, Florence said, and his body promptly shrunk into that of a bat, flapping in the air. Don't worry, little kitty, Fred pet Kuro gently, noticing his distress. I'll take good care of you. Holding him carefully, Fred flapped his stony wings. After a bit of trying, he got off the ground. Fee fled fluidly into the air, and Florence followed. The city twinkled beneath them like stars, alive with parties and haunted houses and kids running around, tricking for treats. The cool autumn air rushed beneath Florence's wings, soothed Fred's aching limbs, and made Fee wish she could feel any of it. They headed to the densest part of the city, where the skyscrapers grew and office buildings crowded around shops and restaurants, traffic braiding between them. Fred guided them to the roof of a particular building. He slowly set Kuro down, who seemed sufficiently rattled. Florence landed safely beside the cat, poofing back into his humanoid form, adjusting his coat. He reached down to scratch between his ears, chuckling. Fred retrieved his package out of the backpack and looked at it sheepishly. "I didn't fly all this way for you to get cold feet. Get in there!" The ghost tried and failed to slap Fred on the back. "My feet are always cold," Fred muttered. "She means don't worry. And don't. She's going to love it." Florence patted Fred on the shoulder. With a little lock-picking, they managed to get into the building. The offices had met their drabness quota, black and white and gray all over, and properly dressed for the season. They had to sneak and search through a few floors of fluorescent lights before finding the right office. The nameplate read Cicely Grant. She was a woman who visited the graveyard regularly. The more Fred watched her, the more he heard her talk about her life and woes and memories to her father's grave, the more he found himself captivated by her. He didn't know where she lived, but she mentioned where she worked. Luckily, the business was proud enough that the name was plastered in neon at the top of the building. Fred ducked under the doorway, trying to make himself small as he shuffled into the office, replacing any papers he accidentally knocked off. Her office had a few Halloween decorations, which looked handmade. He toyed with a few positions for the gift. "It looks fine," Fee groaned. "Just put it somewhere." A voice called from down the hall. Yeah, I know. I just need to grab something." Florence hastily turned into a bat, flying above to see who, from Fred's rough description, looked to be Cicely in a zombie costume. He had to admit, she was beautiful, but not as beautiful as his wife. Ex-wife? Late wife? No, he was the late one. What do you call your wife when you're the one who's dead? Fee flew by the lights, making them flicker, and zipped down the elevator shaft. Cicely raised an eyebrow at the light bulb, but kept walking. Fred rushed to choose a placement for his gift, then looked around, failing to find a hiding space for himself. Trying to make himself look small wasn't working either. If he could have sweat, he would have been doing so profusely. Luckily, the walk was long enough that Fee was able to reach the breaker and make all the lights go out before Cicely reached her office. The blackout lasted just long enough for Fred to get out of the office and hide properly in the next one over. "What the hell?" Cicely's friend shrieked from the elevator. Florence watched from above as the lights came back on. Cicely, looking confused and shaken, marched faster to her office. As she grabbed her keys from the desk, she almost missed the package, but then froze, squinting at it. Fred's handwriting wasn't the neatest, but it clearly had her name on it. Brow furrowed, she picked up the pressed flowers on top, spinning one between her fingers, then opened the gift. It was a wood carving of a train. Fred had often heard her speak of the trains her father conducted, and had made it based on Florence's description. Cicely studied the craftsmanship and smiled, looking a bit in awe. "Where did you come from?" she whispered to herself. Just as she was about to open the letter, her friend called from the elevator, still sounding spooked herself. "Cicely, we'll be late!" "I'm coming." She placed her prizes in her purse and ran back to the elevator. "That was too close," Fee tisked. Fred, poking his head up, grinned from one pointed ear to the other. They found their way back to the roof. Kuro, who had been waiting for them, mused,
"Hey, you know what I miss? The ground. Why don't we take a walk? This is the one night when people won't scream at your horrifying faces. Or if walking is too far, surely a cab driver wouldn't be too suspicious of a 7-foot-tall gargoyle hopping into his vehicle."
"What's he saying?" Fred leaned over. Florence sighed. "No offense intended, I'm sure." He glared at Kuro. "He didn't enjoy flying. He wants to walk." "Oh, that's a great idea. I would love to see the city." Fred's jewel eyes sparkled. "I don't get to see anything from my graveyard." Hey, you get to see us. Also various ghosts, mourners, and services. Not to mention Cicely, Florence pointed out.
Yeah, and we just visited the only thing on that list that isn't depressing. Besides,
Thea's eyes fell to the ground as she wrapped her arm.
I wouldn't mind putting off my turn a little longer,
she murmured softly. Florence shrugged. Fair enough. We can walk if you want. With a minor flight to the sidewalk, the group proceeded to walk to their next destination. It was on the outskirts of the city, so the journey was lengthy, but they didn't mind. While Fee could come and go anywhere she pleased, no one could see her, the other two usually had to be more careful. They passed by costumed humans of all ages. In the bustling city, young adults walked into booming clubs in costumes that didn't cover much. Once they reached the quieter neighborhoods, older adults and children bounded along with baskets and bags full of candy. A dog growled at Kuro, and once he escaped, Kuro proceeded to regale the story.
Did you see that, Florence? That dangerous wolf almost killed me!
Kuro cried melodramatically as he hopped onto the vampire's shoulders. I didn't. Was it behind the chihuahua?
You belittle my plight.
I don't deny it was vicious, but it definitely wasn't a wolf.
However far down the tree, it's still a descendant.
Once they arrived, Florence was proud to see his old house properly decorated with lights and spiderwebs, carved pumpkins on the steps, and candles flickering in the windows, illuminating the stickers on the glass. One pumpkin had a cute face on it. The other depicted a much creepier image. Florence sighed. Daphne really was too lenient with her. Florence pulled his gift out of the bag he'd brought, and, knowing the spare key was under the stone frog in the garden, entered the house. He requested that all but Kuro stay out of this, despite Fee's protests that no one could see or hear her anyways. Kuro bounded up the steps first, sitting just inside the threshold. Florence stopped in front of him. So, are you gonna invite me in?
Only if you pay the toll.
Florence sighed. What toll is that?
You must say the magic words.
He sighed longer. Kuro is the best cat ever, and he deserves all the scritches and tuna the world has to offer.
You may enter, vampire.
Florence rolled his eyes as he stepped inside. Slinking into the entryway, he heard rain start pattering on the roof. As he passed the living room, framed memories waved at him. His wedding day, Ari's birthdays, vacations, pictures he himself drew lined the hallway, peppered with Ari's drawings. He found a door with a sign taped to it, which read Ari's room in crayon. Inside was an amalgamation of plushies, princesses, and anime memorabilia. Florence passed by a mirror and felt his dead heart jolt. He never got used to the fact that he couldn't look himself in the eye. He set his gift on the nightstand, a few pieces of her favorite candy, a kind which people rarely gave out due to most kids finding it gross, and a drawing of Kuro, or at least a black cat, on a pumpkin. As he passed by the mirror a second time, he stopped in front of his blank reflection and brought his claw-like fingers up to his fangs. Kuro? The cat cocked his head. Do I really look horrifying? Do you think Ari would scream if she saw me?
I'm named after a demon cat in an anime you told her she was too young to watch. I don't think she'd have a problem with her vampire father.
He couldn't help a smile forming around those fangs.
I was just teasing you, Kuro added. You don't look scary, Florence.
He nodded, swallowing. Then he pointed at the gift. Make sure to bite on that a little. Make it look like you dragged it in. But don't eat the candy.
Aye, aye, Captain.
Kuro started chewing on the paper. Florence petted the cat. Thanks for all your help.
Don't mention it,
he said, with paper in his mouth. They're coming. Fee flew in. Hide or get out of here. Lawrence tried to, as quickly and quietly as he could, maneuver out the window and into the rain. Kuro bapped his ankles, trying to help. That was a cool gargoyle costume that guy had. At the sound of Ari's adorable voice, pain rose in Florence's chest. Uh-huh. Take off your shoes, young lady.
Okay, Mom.
Fluttering just outside in his bat form, Florence could barely see Ari dart into the room. She was the cutest werewolf princess he'd ever seen. As she threw her candy basket on the bed, she saw the gift. She blinked and walked up to it, cautiously picking it up. Without warning, she zoomed out of the room. As Fred walked up beside Florence, offering one hand to perch on and the other as a shield from the rain, they could hear her say, "Mommy, Mommy, look!" "Oh, what's that you got there?"
"It looks like Kuro brought it in."
"Oh, I hope some other kid isn't missing their treats."
Look, doesn't it look like Daddy drew this?"
"Oh, well..." There was a moment of silence, and then Florence heard a noise that nearly wrenched his dead heart out. Daphne, crying. Her voice cracked. "It does, doesn't it?" Ah, he remembered the word for it now. Widow. Florence fell to his knees in the soggy grass as himself. Crying was such a nuisance now. Bloody tears were difficult to hide or clean, but he couldn't help it. He had only been a vampire for a few years, and the weight of being so close but unable to touch was worse than any other part of this existence.
"I'll watch over her for you,"
Kura said softly from the window. Florence nodded, using Fred's help to get to his feet, and lifted his head to the sky to let the rain wipe his tears away. Their last stop wasn't too far. They walked again, running into some kids who they let take a picture of them, despite the nagging fear that Fee might show up in them and Florence might not, before arriving at a hospital. Fee waded through the walls easily, but Fred and Florence had to make other arrangements. Luckily, the room they needed to get to was on the ground floor and had a window. Both luckily and unluckily, its resident was barely conscious. Just unluckily, the others in the room were certainly conscious, each of them crying, holding each other's hands, and muttering soft words to each other or the patient. Fee had already been in the room for a few minutes when they arrived. The lights flickered and the people shivered, responding to her presence, but she was careful to give the machines, which beeped with disquieting inconsistency, a wide berth. Fred managed to attach himself to the side of the building, only able to listen. Florence as a bat fluttered into the corner, using the flickering light to hide his shadow. A man lay on the bed, with gnarled old skin, patchy hair, and a needle in his arm. He stirred and grimaced. Fee, floating at the foot of the bed, with her arms folded over it, sat observing. After a moment, she began to sing. It was a haunted melody. But it wasn't the fact that a ghost sang it that made it haunting. It was the fact that the ghost sang with all the pain, aches, and toil of someone whose life had been stolen too young, who'd watched from afar as the decades went by and her loved ones grew older and the dirt beneath her headstone grew colder. As she finished, tears streaked her half-transparent face. When she was done, the old man, whose name on the door read Robert Riella, stirred, and his old eyes crinkled in a smile. He looked at exactly the place where Fee floated and croaked, "Good night, Mom." The group around him gasped, surprised to hear him speak. They followed his eyes, but found nothing there. Exclamations and questions followed. Fee, gasping herself, rushed forward and put her arms around him, even though she went right through him. As Robert, almost seeming to hold her even so, smiled contentedly, the machines resounded with a single beep. The group shrieked and clamored. Lawrence used the distraction to make his way to the window, anticipating an onslaught of doctors would soon join the mournful family. Before he left, he saw Fee, smiling as she never had, disappear, like something between snowflakes in the wind and glass shattering in slow motion. Once they got away from the window, Fred muttered faintly, "Goodbye, Robert. Goodbye, Fee." And Florence couldn't tell if the water on the gargoyle's face was rain or tears. Lawrence turned back into himself, leaning on to Fred for support, unable to hold back tears for the second time that night. The two walked back to the graveyard in silence. Florence was unable to stop his mind from wandering, wondering if his fate would one day be kinder or crueler. As Frederick returned to his position on his pedestal, Florence, noticing the first beads of day creeping upon the horizon, asked, "Shall we do this again next year?" "Must we wait a whole year to see them again?" Throw up for those moths and monsters. Cheer for this story if you loved it. Okie dokie. And then I don't think I saw a lot of chatter, but if you guys just have anything to say, any overall things you would like to say or discuss or note, then just go ahead and say it. We will talk about that. Let me read the notes first. So some of this is more housekeeping stuff than questions. I'm so happy and proud of this story. When I set this contest/challenge, I wasn't sure I'd make anything for it, so I didn't really contemplate story ideas, even with 3 months to do so. But at the last minute, I was feeling sad about the prospect of not posting anything. As I mentioned in more detail below, on Wednesday, I got the initial image and just told myself to start. Make an attempt. Pants it. And I can't believe what came of it. I am so freaking proud that I wrote this whole thing. Not just wrote it, but I, little perfectionist that I am happy with it in 4 days. The question is, did you guys enjoy reading it as much as I did writing it? Words and challenges I attempted. Words, I'm so happy to say that I managed to use all the words. Not only that, I managed to slip in the words I contemplated, but ultimately didn't include in the list. Not even all of them intentionally. They were Reaper, Zombie, Undead, Autumn, and Halloween. Challenges. I attempted to make the story wholesome and the ending wholesome, even if it was a bit bittersweet. One of the challenges is write a type of story you wouldn't usually write. So I did a few things I don't usually do. 1, I wrote this in third omniscient, a perspective I don't usually write in. 2, I pantsed this story. Or at least semi-pantsed it. I'm an extreme plotter, but on Wednesday I got this idea of a vampire walking into a graveyard to talk to a gargoyle and told myself, hey, just write it down and see if anything comes of it. Well, it turns out something very much did. The only thing I had to plan is I got the idea that Florence had a daughter and wanted to give her a gift when I was jotting stuff down on Wednesday, but I couldn't figure out how to make the gargoyle and ghost important. So I had to contemplate on Thursday until I realized they all could be giving their human loved ones gifts. Do you feel I accomplished that challenge with either or both of those things? Questions. 1, did any of the words from the word bank stick out and or feel shoehorned in? 2, did the omniscient perspective work? Did anything feel odd in that regard? Did it read more like Third Limited from Florence's point of view? 3, was anything confusing or clunky? 4, did it work that all 3 of them saw the gifts? Cicely came back to grab something, Ari got back from trick-or-treating, and Robert saw Fee. Or did you have to suspend your disbelief that they just so happened to return at that moment? 5, did the names work? Was the fact that Florence, Frederick, and Fee all had F names distracting? That was not intentional. I either just wrote down whatever name popped into my head or used a random name generator. Then I realized they all started with F. 6, did anything surprise you? I was especially attempting to make it a bit of a twist that it was Fee's son and not, say, her husband. Were you surprised that Florence had a daughter? That Kuro was his daughter's cat? 7, did you find the story impactful? Yes, it's meant to be cute and wholesome, but I wanted it to have genuine heart/meat/impact. Often cute things are brushed off as just that, and that wasn't my intention with this story. If anything, I want it to be more impactful than it is cute/wholesome. I especially want Fee's interaction with her son to be genuinely impactful. Best of all, if it brings tears to the eyes. And maybe Florence's interaction with his daughter too. 8, what were your favorite parts, your favorite lines? 9, what do you make of the title? 10, if I were to write more stories about these characters, what stories/scenes would you like to see? I already have a few ideas. 11, did you like the story? 12, any other compliments, questions, comments, critiques, concerns? Thank you very much for reading and reviewing. There also was another question that I was going to edit in. I didn't have the characters for it, so I couldn't. Which is the fact that I'm watching Blue Exorcist right now. And as I said with the names, I just wrote down, I either used a name generator or wrote down just whatever came to mind the minute I was writing. And because I'm watching Blue Exorcist, there is a talking cat in that, well, it's a demon cat, but it's a talking cat whose name is Kuro. Kuro means black in Japanese. And so when it was like, I have a black cat character, brain, come up with a name, it's like, Kuro. And so then I was like, well, maybe I could make it that is actually in canon how he got his name. That the person who named him watched the anime. And I just really liked the idea of this little kid who's not supposed to be watching that kind of anime watched it and was like, I loved it so much. I love this cat. I'm naming my cat after it. I guess I'll also ask, that was a thing with the pumpkins too. How easily can I find it? Yeah, so this was meant to be that you would think that the child would make the cute pumpkin and the adult would make a spooky pumpkin. But actually the child was like, let's do something spooky, Mom. And then Daphne like makes it for her. And then Daphne's like, all right, Ari, can you make me something cute? And then she does, so they like, the creepy one was for the kid, but there's a lot going on there. So I get it if that didn't come through. But anyways, so yeah, the other question I didn't get to write down is, did it work that the whole like anime thing that like I'm named after a demon cat, or was it like, what the heck are you talking about? Where is it? Oh, you're right here. Okay, let's see what folks have been saying. Thank you for the cheers, Death's Head, Norman Gray, and Magistrate Ironlung. Really appreciate it. Not the 3 a.m. wormy. Yeah, actually, that is a question I had. I should have asked this in the questions too. So, what were the 3 options? If I remember correctly, I had 3 options for that joke, and one is what I had. Another one is, where is it? Oh, here, okay. I think it was like, you told Johnny last week he was a slimy, pathetic excuse for an existence. And then I was like, that just feels too generic. It's not that funny. And then I was thinking of using a joke from, I forget what it's called, but the guy who makes like those D&D memes, and he's lately been doing a lot of like, the bard insulting the evil king sort of memes, shorts. And one of them was, you're more disappointing than that uncrunchy leaf. And so I was thinking of using that one. And then the other one was the worm thing. And so I don't love that I used a meme. And so like I might want to change that so it ages better. But like, were you like, cringing at the meme use? Or were you like, no, actually it was funny? And especially if you were cringing, what do you think I should use instead? What would be a funny insult? I was on a time crunch. I just had to throw something in there. Something I was thinking about that, like, well, the reason I went with the worm one is because I asked a friend, and a friend voted for that, and I was like, okay, that's all I need. But the thing is, I could totally see, like, I think of Johnny as just like this deadbeat, undead, sleazy guy who like has seen the like TikToks about the worm stuff, and he just like turns to the group of vampires or whatever and is like, would you guys love me if I was a worm? And then Florence is just like, no, because you're already a worm and we don't love you. That kind of thing. But yeah. A fateful decision. What is that in relation to? And then so Norman says, so I need to know, how the heck did you write this in 4 days? How do I harness this power? And Mako said, most of my story was written between midnight and 6 a.m. I can attest to this. And then Norman says, I may or may not have stayed up to 5 a.m. to give mine a last pass and a title. Very fair. Honestly, I don't completely know why, how I was able to do this in 4 days. As far as I know, I've never done anything like this. Like I said, I was like really happy and shocked and stuff like that I was able to do that. And like, yeah, all I can think is kind of just what I've already said, that it's like, I just had this image of vampire walking into a graveyard to talk to a gargoyle, and it was just like, just sit down and write it. I mean, maybe I can show you guys something. You might enjoy this if I can. Oh, no, I need to. That's gonna make this harder. Drafts? drafts. Okay, good. Um, So, I should explain. I'm going to show you, oh, maybe I can't multitask. I'll just actually show it to you. Go over here, go over here, go over here. Go back over here. Ah! Didn't mean to do that. It threw Discord up there. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, so I have right here all the... So this is actually something I do, and I don't know if it's something I necessarily recommend everyone do, but it works for me. So I will write like the original version, and then instead of just being like, okay, I have it, I'm gonna edit it right here, and then next day arriving at it and being like, I'm gonna edit in the same document, what I do is I'm like, okay, I wrote this down. Let's copy that, paste it, let's edit on the new version. And I especially kept track of it with this because, like I said, I've never done a story like this before, and so I was like, I want to see what the progression was. I want to see what the difference was. And so this was all I had on Wednesday that I just had. I'm not going to read through it, but you can just see how little there is there. It's just little bits and pieces of the scene. And I have, like, I don't know if I've ever showed you guys, like, whenever I write something, I write down multiple options. And so, like, here I could say path or sidewalk, and so I wrote them both down. And then I had different options for the spider and stuff like that. And that is something I recommend because it makes, at least for me, it makes writing flow a lot easier. That instead of sitting there and being like, oh, what do I do? Do I pick path? Do I pick sidewalk? That instead you just are like, write them both down, move on, we're going to come back to it later and decide which one's better. And often you probably will decide better when you come back later, because now you have, you can look at it a second time with fresh eyes within the whole and decide which word is better. And then I have parentheses on things where I'm like, I don't know if I want to include this or not, so I'm gonna, like, couch it with parentheses. And yeah, I often have a lot of parentheses because I'm very, like, indecisive and like, oh, I don't know. But, it's, again, that's also very helpful to me personally because that allows me to not be like, oh, it's set in stone, I have to use this bit of dialogue. It's like, you can if you want to, future Kaylie, you know? But anyways, yeah, so you can see what it was, like, this was just me, this is what happened when I was like, okay, like, I have this image of the vampire and the gargoyle, and that was this, and then, you know, I'm writing, like, notes, like, is it her cat? And stuff like that, so yeah, and then I don't know how long is the next one. Does the next one... Yeah, I guess the next one is actually complete, which is kind of rare for me. But anyways, I don't know if that helps at all, but that is, there's a little sneak peek into what happened, what I did, and in case it's helpful. Also, yes, the tabulation doc is creeping up there. Anywho. You keep hearing Lawrence anyway. Norman, it was very emotionally punchy. Well done. I'm really glad to hear that. Me, when I just tried to pants a story. At age 6, I was born without a face. Yes. What's another one like that? Oh, I wish I had it memorized, but it's like, I come up to the plant and it's like, how you doing, Aaron? And I'm like, it's going great, but it's not going great. I just don't want to share my emotions with the purple plant. That's very fair. Documancer says, it was bittersweet and I loved the anime nodding in. That's great to hear. It says, now the kid making the creepy pumpkin makes perfect sense. I'm not familiar at all with the anime in question, I don't think. Very fair. Glad that worked. Yes. Documancer, Kuro is black and Japanese, so even if it was intended, or whether it was intended or not, it's like a kid naming their cat Blackie. Totally. Or Shadow. And then I was also an anime kid, and boy did I want to name my pets after anime pets. Fantastic. One Shot Questers is the channel. You're more disappointing than an uncrunchy leaf guy. Oh yeah, we had a midstream convo about meme usage. Nice. Mako says, I liked the worm one. Documancer says, I loved the meme. Memes are a part of pop culture, and I still quote ads from the 90s. That is great. Damn ads, get out of my brain. That's great. What's up? Yeah. The brand. just two eyes in the dark. That reminds me of something. I don't think my iPad is up here, but I made a little Halloween animation. I can't figure out how to send it to myself and thus send it to the Discord, but I can stick my iPad up to the camera and show it to you guys. So tell me to show that to you guys at the end of the stream. Don't let me forget. Choosing to go last was fateful for Fee. Gotcha. Yeah, that is a question I'll ask you guys. Do you think that it was coincidence that, Fee happened to be there at his death? Or do you think, like, she in some part caused his death, either because he saw her and he was like, I'm at peace, I can let go? Or did she mess with the machines that were helping to keep him alive? What do you think the situation was? Personally, I don't really like the last interpretation, because I think it makes it more sinister than I wanted it to be. But I could see people having that interpretation. Oh no! I didn't have it on screen. Gosh darn it. Okay, let's go again. Oh, it's tiny. Oh, now it's huge. So that's Thursday. This is all I had for, on Wednesday night. So this part right here, especially, this is the part that, I wrote when I was like, just write down your image for the gargoyle. And so then I was talking about, like, path and sidewalk and the parentheses and stuff like that. Appreciate that, mods. We had a white cat named Marty. I don't think I've heard of that ad. Look with your special eyes, my brand. Never considered she caused his death, just sort of assumed she happened to be there for his final moments. Gotcha. Yeah, it felt like he could see her because he was crossing over. Exactly. That was much more the intent, for sure. But, yeah, let's see. Do I have any other questions for you? I was right. It was an hour for just that one story. Oh yeah. One of my reviewers was saying that it seemed odd that there was a Reaper in a graveyard, and I was very mixed on that, because on the one hand I was like, you're right, that is kind of like, I don't know, insensitive to put a Reaper in a graveyard. But also at the same time, I feel like I've seen pictures of Reapers in graveyards. I feel like I've seen pictures of Grim Reaper statues in graveyards. I don't know if it's just... No, Kaylie, you've not seen pictures of that. You've seen movies where people are trying to create a spooky ambiance, but people don't actually do that. But I'm curious what you guys think. He must have been waiting for Fee because he didn't pass on, even though she delayed her visit by walking. Very fair, very fair. I kind of went back and forth on if I wanted them all, like all the supernatural creatures, to hear Kuro or just Florence. But one of my beta readers was like, it's odd that, like, there's a talking cat and people don't really know that supernatural creatures exist. And I was like, oh, normal people can't hear him. And so I felt like I needed to clarify that by, like, being like, no, it's a power that Florence has. It's, like, it's not even a thing that all supernatural creatures can hear him. It's just, like, that's one of his vampire powers, that he can hear him. So curious what you guys think of that. If you would have preferred that they all can hear him. Oh yeah, was there anything funny? Anything make you laugh? I was focused on making you cry, but that's an option too. Oh yeah, so this was one of the paragraphs that was more third omniscient, that maybe Florence would know this well enough to say it, but my intention was like, okay, we're kind of talking about Fred. Now we're talking about Fred's experiences. But I totally get why, like, most of my reviewers were like, nah, it seemed like it was Florence's point of view. And not surprised that I kind of failed in my intent, but yes. Yeah, did this whole bit work? Did it have impact and he remembered? Oh yeah, I'm so mad that, like, I realized as I was reading this that I was meant to do, like, a comparison of the costumes. And then it just seems weird, because it's like, wow, scantily clad people. And then kids and their parents. Not, like, you know, comparing the costumes of, like, oh yes, the sexy costumes and kids in costume, and then their chaperones. Marks me, I'm sure I've seen Reapers in a graveyard before. Also me, oh crap, it totally might have been movies. I know, right? Exactly. Kuro made me laugh the most. That sass. That's awesome. Why does that sass sound so much like that ass? That sass. I'm really glad, like, my reviewers seem to really like Florence and Kuro's relationship. It's interesting because I didn't even realize until, like, I was away from it for a week and then came back to practice. Fred barely talks. I thought he had a lot more lines, and so it definitely makes sense that Kuro and Florence carried the story, because they kind of were the story. They were the people who talked the most. Oh yes, this was a question I had. So it did seem like people liked this, but I'll still ask. Another idea I had for this section is that he starts to walk up the steps, and then Fee or Fred, or probably Fee, would be like, you're a vampire, don't you have to be invited in? And then he would be like, I bought this house, I'm not letting it boss me around, or something like that. Would you have preferred that to this? I like my sass to be thick. Amazing. Gotcha. This says, I walked through the city graveyard for years. Plenty of angels, monoliths, and headstones. No reapers. Gotcha. I feel like he was pretending to be a statue. He probably isn't very talkative. Yeah. Oh, I thought you were talking about the Grim Reaper for a second, that the actual Grim Reaper is that statue, and he's just sitting there pretending, which is way funnier. I hope nobody notices me. Ah. Oh yeah, so I feel like one of my reviewers made a good point. I had a lot of like conflict about the bloody tears thing, but most of the vampires I've seen cry bloody tears, and so I was just like, I'll add that. But they did make a good point that the bloody tears might have detracted from the emotion of the scene. That it would have been better just to have him cry normally. Would you guys agree with that, or were you like, no, it was still impactful even with the wacky vampire tears? Uh, um, Victorian era had an obsession with death. I can believe a graveyard could have a reaper in it. That's very fair. Um, yeah, what about the mortars? Do they want to see that? Uh-huh. Well, they'd see the reaper long before they got to the grave. Savage. Wouldn't the reaper be like the last thing a soul would see from the grave? Well, now I want to start putting money aside so I can have a reaper statue over my grave. Amazing. It would have been pretty funny if Florence was like, "Let me in, house!" That's great. The Reaper's just hanging out. Yeah, he's just, like, enjoying the festivities. Florence bumping his head on an invisible wall barrier at the door. I guess I could have done both. Yeah, it could have been like, I bought this house. I'm not letting it boss me around. Thunk. And then he has to do the whole thing with Kuro. I like the imagery, although I don't recall ever seeing that in vampire media. Really? Interesting. I've seen it in Castlevania for sure. I'm trying to remember because I know when I was writing this, I thought of multiple things. But now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, what were the other things besides Dracula? What were they? Man. I'll have to think more later because I'm absolutely certain I had like 3 things that I was thinking about, and they all had the vampires crying bloody tears. Yes, that's even better. Documancer says, "Imagine, don't you need to be invited into houses? Do you know how many times I've had to maintenance that damn house and its creaks? It better let me in." Totally. Vega says, "I prefer vampires to not be able to produce tears at all over tears of blood." Interesting. Why is that? Aerith says, "I've seen the bloody tears bit in a Queen of the Damned film, I think." Interesting. I feel like I should keep... I feel like I should keep talking for another 11 minutes so that Documancer doesn't get the ad either. Because it's gonna be... it's like exactly on the hour, and so I think the other one happened at 4:11. I guess I'll keep thinking while we're waiting. I think I've said this on streams before, but like whenever anybody is like, "Hey Kaylie, how was your week?" Anything I did during the week flies out of my brain, and I'm like, "It was good." And so that's what's happening to me right now, that it's like, "Oh, hey, Kaylie, where have you seen, like, bloody tears in vampire media?" And I'm like, have I ever watched a vampire movie ever? Have I seen any vampire media? I just can't remember. The implication that all their fluid is blood weirds me out. Like, why is there blood in their tear ducts? I thought you ate that stuff. Gotcha. Nervous vampire sweats blood. Bloody sweat or bloody saliva. That is wild. Yeah, maybe I have to watch Castlevania again more carefully and see, like, was that an only Dracula thing? I mean, I know Alucard can cry normal tears. That is how the season 2 ends. But he's also half vampire, so I don't know if that would relate. So I can't remember if I'd have to watch it again to know if it's just Dracula, and so he was doing it for the spooks, and the other vampires have normal tears. But I mean, I guess part of the reason I feel like Castlevania as a franchise must have that is because Castlevania has a song, a very famous and very good song called Bloody Tears. And so that kind of makes me assume that all vampires in Castlevania have that. Let's see. I'm pretty sure they have done that in every movie based on an Anne Rice novel, but that is canon for Anne Rice vampires in the books too. Which part? The, like, bloody tears? The bloody sweat and saliva? Or what? I kind of agree with Makeup because crying feels like a human thing to do, even though society is reluctant to cry, but that's a whole other tangent. I mean, you're hitting on another thing, which is how human are vampires, because that's another question. Like, if you want to make them very not human, you'll make them not cry at all. But if you want to make them more human, then like, maybe they should be able to cry. I just remembered. I remember what another thing was. It was Vampire the Masquerade. Because my character in my campaign of that had a rough night and was crying a lot. And then my DM was like, "You do know that you cry blood, right?" And I was like, well, I do now. So, at least those two. Let's see. I want to, like, look it up. I might have even looked it up on the internet before. Let me show you what just came up. Their tears are blood tears. That is the first thing that comes up. What is that? What are you getting that from? What is NCESC? Oh, gaming. So that is from Castlevania. A vampire does not cry human tears. Instead, all bodily fluids replaced with blood, so that would be saliva and stuff like that. There are certain exceptions, such as saliva and the vitreous fluid in the eyeballs. Ooh, this is somebody, it looks like it's for Vampire the Masquerade. Somebody saying, "I allow vampires that have a humanity of 8 or higher," I assume that'll say, to cry normal tears. The player is Kayana close enough. Yeah, all their bloody fluid, all their bodily fluids are replaced with blood. They can cry blood like lame teenage hipsters. Interesting. I would allow Kindred to cry blood as emotionally appropriate, or to spend blood points to cry watery tears, as per the rules for spending to mimic human functions like body temperature and eating. Interesting. They cry vitae. Mm-hmm. Yeah, officially vampires can cry. When they do, they cry blood instead of salt tears. Unofficially, I allow vampires who have a humanity of 8 or higher to cry normal tears. This is just a house rule I use for flavor. I like that rule. That's really, really neat. And then, for the record, not all bodily fluids are replaced by blood when a human becomes a vampire. Just most of them. Specifically, yeah. So they're repeating what it said before. Okay, so I was correct for Vampire the Masquerade, and there's Castlevania with the actual stuff like that. So, I can't tell if, like, I don't know where this is from, so I don't know what game that's from. There's the ad we've all been waiting for. Usually we don't like you, but today we were waiting for you. For red mascara for maximum effect. The bloody tears, I mean. Yeah, so it does look like, from what I can see, there's at least 3 franchises that that have them crying bloody tears, and didn't see anything there that was like, no, they cry normal tears, or they don't cry at all. So I'm a little more confident in my choice there. 3, 2, 1. When you gonna start? What? Why are you standing in the fire, Mako? Come on, Ad. But yeah, so I don't think anybody's actually answered the question, though, which is, like, did it detract from the scene? And did it detract from the emotion of the scene? We're all arguing over whether vampires in general should have that ability, but the question is, did it detract from the scene itself?
Oh, my kitty.
And then what would actually, well, maybe I need to ask it when you come back, but what would you have him do if he can't cry at all? Okay, Norman says, didn't detract from me. That's good. Oh, Aerith, that is, why is that both hilarious and horrifying? I feel like that's kind of your vibe, though. Attacks the vampires by jamming onions up their tear ducts to see if they're real vampires or not. I do love that it's like a vampire hunter instead of being like, do you react to garlic? Just be like, oh, I just had to chop these onions here in the middle of the road and see if they cry blood or tears. Now I'm just imagining a vampire being like, get back in there, tear, but not because they're like mad about crying and don't want to show emotion, but just because they don't want anybody to know they're a vampire by crying bloody tears.
Bobo Kitty. What are you doing, Bobo Kitty?
Couldn't even cry without being reminded that he wasn't human anymore. Yep, that. Oh, I see. So are you saying that's why it still had impact? That's cool. I appreciate that. I didn't notice it, but I also had shoddy internet. On today's episode of, was it a problem with the story or was it a problem with the internet? Also, the garbage can is ugly. I want to sit in front of it.
Kitty. Just a queen Bella Bean. Aw, dicks. Tickle licks.
Not Pickle Rick, Tickle Licks. I guess I'll ask you guys. Well, maybe I should ask it when the ad's done. Just because there's no tears doesn't mean you can't have the emotion or sob. It's just dry heaves. Interesting. Brought to you by Traveling Documenter, Shoddy Internet Incorporated. Incredible.
Oh, Bo, you're so cute.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, well, I guess I can keep petting her while I ask. I'm not sure if I should post, like, part 1 of Carmilla and then post, you know, a part 2, next, or, like, post part 1, the VOD, I mean, and then still include part 1 within the next one, because I really wanted Carmilla to be one video like the vampire, and so my options are, A, don't do that, post it in multiple videos, B, post part 1, but also add it to the next part so it's complete the next time. C, don't post part 1, just add it to the next one and put it all together. Yes, I do plan for there to be a part 2. I wanted to finish reading it during October. I was, like, kind of hoping I could do it, like, on Halloween. But that didn't work out. Too busy with the contest. Oh, Carmilla's quite a bit longer than the vampire. Interesting. Yeah, I looked at them and can I unearth you without toppling the entire situation? Not really. Ah! Oops. Yeah, I see it. I don't know how well you guys can. So that's Carmilla. This is the vampire. So yeah, there is quite a bit more.
Oh, well, you must pay the camera tax. You must show yourself to the people. Oh, baby.
Gotcha. So maybe I should.
Maybe I should post a part 1. Oh, yeah.
Alright. Okay. Oh, baby.
Baby cat. Baby cat. Oh, no. What are you stepping on? Are you jumping down? Okay. Yeah, you can come down. It's okay.
Babe, why are you making it harder for yourself? Are you struggling? Are you struggling? You silly thing. Alrighty. But yes, the clutch of the heartstrings, but suffering because tears are supposed to be freeing and a release of being human. It adds a layer of no longer being human and missing some of those aspects. Well, I suppose maybe I should write 3 versions of that scene and then show them to you guys and ask which one you like the most, and then post whichever one people like the most in the book. Oh no. Well, you've reached the end of the video, so this is only a smaller part of a larger stream. You can watch the recording of the full stream, either with or without the intro. You can watch the videos for the other stories from that stream, from that contest, whatever you like, but I appreciate you listening to this story. I am also just a little baby YouTuber just starting out, and I would greatly appreciate it if you liked the video, commented on the video, subscribed to the channel overall. I really appreciate any support that you can give. And I'm starting up some new channels. One is going to be called A Moth in the Library. That is for my more edited content of my book reading. And then I'm going to have A Moth in the Theater. That is for my reaction videos. So if you're interested in either of those things, please go check them out. But in the meantime, I hope you had a good time with this video, and I hope that you have a good day. See you next time. Bye-bye.